Everyone, this is Greg Powers and I'm with my colleague Mike Knutz.
How's it going?
We are here for an exciting webinar today, specifically about 13 technology mistakes common in small law firms. And in particular, it's an interesting topic, mainly because law firms are always trying to figure out, hey, how do I get the edge? What's my competition doing? Are there things I can be doing better to improve? How do I reduce my costs? How do I increase my top line revenue? All those things. And we'll get into that today. So I'm Greg. I run the James Attorney Cloud side of the business. I've been in technology for about the past 30 years. And one of the things I'm good at and I like to do is specifically about strategy and around technology and what's happening, looking around the bend to see what's occurring. And in particular, I've been involved in the cloud side of the business, migrating to the cloud for the last couple of years. And using the power of compute to be able to transform businesses. And began working with James Attorney Cloud a little while ago, specifically to help companies, help law firms migrate to the cloud. So that's what I enjoy doing. Cool. So Mike, how about yourself? Your background?
Yeah, my name's Mike. I work for James Attorney Marketing. My background is quite a bit different, but at the same time, we both use technology to make processes more efficient and help people run their law firms more efficiently. So, but I've been involved in online marketing for about the past 11 or 12 years. The past 2.5 years, I've been working exclusively for attorneys, but before that, I was working for doctors actually. So it was very similar, a lot of overlap in terms of working with local
professional services,
localized. Local SEO is very important to a lot of what we do, and local businesses and managing their online reputation and all that. What's really changed over time in my position of how marketing affects businesses is that I'm really just become a scientist. I'm obviously always looking at metrics like time on site, pages per visit, bounce rate, and most importantly, leads. So those are the kinds of metrics that I'm looking at. I'm doing math a lot more often than anything else. So bottom line, we do a lot of things in terms of marketing, but bottom line, we want to help people grow their business.
So there's a math problem.
Absolutely.
A productivity problem, which is, if any of you are familiar with Thomson Reuters, every year they put out several studies around the report, a report on the state of the legal market. And this past year in 2018, one of the things they came out with was the statistic about the average lawyer is billing 156 fewer hours than they did 10 or 11 years ago. And what's fascinating about that's my math problem, is it seems like it's going in the wrong direction. And the point being that prospective clients have other ways of getting legal help. There are alternative legal services that are out there, LegalZoom, contract review services, artificial intelligence, all of that. And the point is it draws away from some of the specific work that attorneys do and that firms do. So in order to kind of get back, it averages out about $74,000 per firm in lack of productivity. How do you get back at that? This webinar is specifically going to address that. And the first half, we'll kind of talk about the 13 reasons or 13 things that firms, mistakes that some firms make, and then we'll put some solutions in place on the back end, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. And by the way, on the Q&A portion, we'll use the chat box, which is up in the top right of your Zoom. So, number one, these are no particular order, they're not ranked, but we'll just kind of discuss our way through as we go. But first of all, one of the things we see in law firms is that you need to manage people, process, and technology. And very often, some of the software tools that firms select, firms don't necessarily utilize them to their full extent, or maybe some of the people in the firm start to use one tool, like a CRM tool, could be Clio. Then some of the people say, hey, HubSpot, I've got this free account, let's try that. And before you know it, you get this amoeba that's morphing of how you use your tools. And the point is you get inefficient, files get lost, people using different storage areas, and so it's not organized and efficient. Number two is limited document automation. And if there's one thing that comes out of some of these Thomson Reuters reports, is basically for law firms, automate everything you can. One of the best ways to improve productivity. So when you think about document automation, I was recently working with a firm about cloud migration, and one of their big issues was they wanted a paperless office. Mm-hmm. And so part of that we really talked about is that's almost more a process than it is technology. Yes, you need scanning tools, optical character recognition, those sorts of things are helpful. But at the end of the day, you do need process in place with your employees around, hey, we go paperless and we need to automate, our document drill. Number three, underutilizing training options. So it's a source of inefficiency. And when you think about the tools that are out there, many software firms offer training for their tools. So if you're using something like S-Case or Time Matters or Abacus as a case management tool, the firms do offer training, and it's something that you can take advantage of. If you use an IT company to manage your technology, they'll offer training, especially around cybersecurity, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But the point is, we see firms, that are performing well. Maybe they'll have quarterly training sessions, or they'll do a monthly lunch and learn. When they're bringing lunch in for the office, turn it into a training opportunity to get people together for, an hour.
I mean, there's still stuff like, just on a personal note, like internally, there's technology and software applications that we use that we're still constantly learning new features that we're not utilizing, and that, can take the place of, a manual process that takes, an hour out of my day that I could just simply automate.
Good. Number four is failure to implement a knowledge database. So small firms, can often have this issue of turnover. In other words, and if you're a small firm, by the way, 10 people and 1 or 2 people leave that year, that's actually a pretty high rate of turnover. And a few things happen. Number one is knowledge is walking out the door unless you have a database and a common place to store documents, to store data, to store client information, and people are well versed using it. Good cloud tools like Google Drive, mm-hmm. Dropbox, those sorts of things. Team rooms, setting them up in there. And then the other aspect is when you bring in new employees, you want to minimize the learning curve as new employees come in so they can get up to speed and actually dig in, and they know right where the tools are to be able to go at it and what clients they're working with. Everything's available to them. But it comes down to, you've got to set up the process ahead of time in terms of what is the workflow, how things are organized, who's responsible for what. There's some planning that needs to occur. And then the last one in process improvement technology, limited control or knowledge of your staff's applications and web usage. And at first blush, I don't mean that this is Big Brother looking over the shoulder of the employees in the law firm, but rather one of the things we find is that some law firms, they have one super user of the CRM tool, and that tends to be the person that's doing all the CRM. Or the case management software. And the issue is that everybody kind of needs to have equal ownership, responsibility, be able to use the tool so that it's much more effective. You've got to rely on teamwork as opposed to the heavy lifters. And in particular for the senior attorneys in the firm who might be the owners as well or partners, being able to utilize the same tools as a way of making sure that there's uniformity and people realize, hey, this is an important thing. I need to learn how to use this tool properly.
Definitely.
Okay, so around process improvement, if I have one takeaway, run your firm like a business. Think about efficiency, how to do things faster, how to automate, how to integrate your systems, decrease the workload, hire fewer admin people, hire more attorneys, and that has a way that will benefit in terms of increasing client satisfaction. So that's kind of the big takeaway. Run your firm like a business. So phase 2, let's shift gears, and we'll go from process technology to marketing. And I'll turn this portion over to Mike and let you run with the ball.
Awesome. So yeah, I mean, you don't have a business without leads, and you don't have, without customers. The way to get the customers is to get leads. Most law firms and attorneys obviously at this point have a website, some kind of website. May have been created in the 90s. in some instances, but people are starting to understand the importance of online engagement and having a good, not only just a good desktop website, but a optimized mobile website as well. So, but one of the things we want to make sure that we have on our website are clear calls to action. A chat box can increase engagement. I've seen, we work with one of the top bankruptcy attorneys in Texas who, 20 to 25% of their leads come through chat. So if you're not utilizing that feature, you're definitely behind. Contact form, that's kind of a no-brainer. Definitely want to have a phone number available. You want it to be click to call on mobile. And then another feature that we've kind of been rolling out to our clients that we've seen really huge gains on is just SMS texting, offering text messaging to people who reach your website. Just if you're not utilizing SMS at this point, you're missing out on a very large demographic of customers out there, because the new generations, people my age and younger are, they're just interacting with technology differently, and they want to get answers to their problems. They may not want to talk on the phone, but they want someone who can interact with them. That's why chat works, and then SMS as well. So they can submit their questions and get a response, even if they're busy. If they're out doing something. The point
is, you don't need to wait till Monday morning at 9 o'clock when everybody's in to be able to begin responding back. Absolutely. Hey, who contacted us over the weekend, and start getting back to them. You can actually engage Saturday morning or Saturday night or Sunday, and
that's a good point.
Let people know right away. Hey, we've got your info, and you start the intake process.
Definitely, and that's a good point. There's a lot of third-party agencies out there that will offer 24-hour responses by text and over the phone, as well as setting up chat bots with automated responses based on keyword spotting and all that. So you could have an AI chat bot as well. And then another way to just attract people, if you're not utilizing lead magnets, offering something for free by filling out a contact form on your website, whether it be a white paper, a book, a webinar, a link to a video that you did. Technology allows us to reach a ton of people at different times. This webinar itself will be recorded in cyberspace, and someone else, a week from now, 2 weeks from now, a month from now, a year from now, could potentially stumble across this video and be reached by it. So,
by the way, do you think prospective clients, are they becoming more accustomed to clicking on, downloading information, click here to get a cloud migration guide, or click here to get, the 10 things I need to know about bankruptcy filing? Are they okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Becoming more prevalent?
Definitely. For, obviously with attorneys, we want to attract the leads that are high intent.
Yep.
We want the ones that are calling right away, that are, doing the chat bot, they have an immediate need. But we don't want to leave out those people who just are looking for more information. So these are the people who fill your pipeline. And if we go to the next thing on the list, I think this is going to kind of segue right into the lead nurturing. Good. Because this is huge. Okay, if you get all of your leads, you got everything going on your website, but you're not following up, I mean, you're just dropping the ball. And there's tons of ways to automate this stuff. We can actually have, contact forms connected directly to your CRM, putting out campaign emails for new leads, not just new leads, but throughout the entire client lifecycle, beyond retention. All that can be automated. But it starts with lead nurturing. Today, the sales cycle for attorneys is getting, that window is getting smaller and smaller. When people search on their phone, they're making a decision in that first couple hours, really. I mean, they've made an appointment or something. So you definitely want to have an immediate response. So this enables you to connect your website. So even call tracking, that can be imported into your CRM, and then they're automatically barraged with emails, SMS. We can set up SMS, messages going out to.
And you can control the timing of that as well, so that it's the appropriate pace or the appropriate period.
Absolutely.
So, it's not too much.
And
or too
well,
little.
it just
You can kind of
depends
find out
on
what's right.
it depends on the business, the business model. Because I have clients who purchase leads from Nolo, who their approach is a little more aggressive than someone who's just getting internet leads, and they live in a small community and they don't want to barrage people. So there's definitely different approaches, but the bottom line is that you're only doing this once. Once you have this set up, you're done. I mean, if you have the automation set up, you have your website connected to your CRM, and you have these different campaigns that go out, all this is running in the background. You're just letting it go. And then when you actually have people contacting you, that's when you actually need a live person.
So it's a good way. It's the ultimate in efficiency, is the point that you're really taking
Absolutely.
human interaction out of it.
If you're manually sending out emails or text messages yourself, or if you're paying someone to do it, I mean, you're just behind the times. I mean, you can within a week, have all that process automated, and that'll save you a couple hours a day, probably. I mean, potentially.
Or having to hire a new person.
Exactly. If all that's going on, I have clients who get closed deals for leads that they got 6 months ago, 12 months ago. They're just in the pipeline, getting these touch points and just keeping you at the top of the inbox. And then lastly is just measuring the ROI. So with our clients, and what I recommend for anybody out there listening to this is, like, we set up a dashboard. We pull in all the data from analytics, AdWords, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever it is, Google My Business. We pull all that data into one spot, so we can see how each marketing medium is performing, all the way down to leads. We do call tracking, so we can track every call that comes through the website. We use tracking numbers for all of our profile websites, like citation sites like Yelp or Yellow Pages.
To your point, the return on investment, you can track how much you're spending on each of those as an expense, and then you can track what is the revenue that you're generating from those clients.
Absolutely.
And you can get your ROI. So that gives you kind of the roadmap. If the ROI is really low or zero, to shift gears to something that's yielding.
That you need help.
Yes.
So a lot of attorneys that I come across that don't have these things in place, they're just flying blind. I get people who submit inquiries all the time who just say, I have no idea what is performing and what's not. That's the worst thing I've ever heard, because it's like, if we can at least track each source of leads and where revenue is being generated, then we can be much more intelligent with the way we use our marketing funds in the future, and not just where we divert the funds, but see what's underperforming and find out why it's not performing, and make adjustments there.
So it's data analytics is really what you've got. Good. All right, that was very good. Let's shift gears. So we've talked about process technology, marketing technology. I'm going to talk about cybersecurity, one of my favorite topics.
Okay.
I spend a lot of time in this area because it's rapidly changing and difficult to know what it is, but yet it can be expensive and time-consuming if a problem arises. So one of the issues that we see, number 9 on our list, is employees storing unencrypted client data on a portable device, and sometimes a story helps here. So I'm familiar with a firm that had a medical device. It was a heart monitor, and an employee's working on client data. They download about 1,500 records from clients onto a laptop. The employee takes the laptop home, leaves it in the car overnight, and of course, we all know what happens next. The car gets broken into overnight, and the laptop is stolen. And the takeaway, because of HIPAA compliance issues, is it ended up costing the company $2.5 million in fines, to to rectify that. And the point is that that's expensive and maybe even on the short side of potentially how big the fines could be. So it's a real deal. You've got to really be concerned about where you're storing your data, and we'll talk about cloud solutions in a little bit, but it's a big deal. Next, opening attachments from unknown senders. I think we're all guilty of that. And the point is that it really boils down to training. Any cybersecurity event that you attend or seminar you attend, there's always one of the main takeaways is that typically the employees are the weakest link. It's not the IT department or a VPN or a firewall. You've got to have all those things, but the people that are the employees are typically the weakest link, and it starts with training. So things like phishing happen. We've all heard of the emails that come in where the CEO or maybe in this particular case, let's say the partner of the firm says, "Hey, I'm on a vacation, in Africa, and I can't get cash. Can you have somebody send me, wire $2,000?"
Right.
And you want to be, diligent, but it always works. There's always people who do that.
Most of that one guy.
Yes. So these things happen, but the most important thing is through training, you can really minimize this aspect of making sure people don't do that. I've heard of companies that do training on this. Periodically, they'll send out something with an attachment, click here, and inevitably, they always get some of the executives will click on it and violating policy that's in place. But the point is, it's one of the best ways to train. Number 11, insufficient backup strategies. So in some respects, the smaller the firm, this seems to be more prevalent. And what is a good backup strategy? Typically, if you've already migrated to the cloud, you're backing up real time. Your data is always backed up. If you are doing your computing, if your computers are in your office, some firms will back up nightly, some will back up weekly. But if you're not backing up on a regular basis, then something's going to happen where you need to get access. Something typically breaks down, whether it's your server or your backup storage. Something happens, and you're going to have to go back to your most recent backup. And if it's been a month, that's a lot of data to recreate. It also may require you to go back to your clients to get information, or maybe to opposing attorney, to go get information. It's a real challenge, and doesn't reflect on the firm very well. Number 12, continuing to use on-site servers. So you heard me talk a little bit about this. On-site servers are a real target, and in particular, there are kind of in the picture here we've got on the right. I'll call them bad actors or black hats, dark hats. But people will specifically target professional services like law firms that are relatively small in order to put in ransomware and then hold the company's data hostage. And kind of two things here about using, and the reason on-site servers, there's some problems, which is they're typically not that secure. There's a reason that the Department of Defense and the CIA use Amazon Web Services for a lot of their compute usage because of security. But here's two cases of companies. Number one is a company that I'm familiar with. These are both clients of ours. One who had a ransomware attack, and they paid the money and then didn't get their data back, and then paid it twice and still didn't get the data back. And then another company, same thing, ransomware, and they had a good backup strategy. So they were able to actually take everything offline, reboot with information from the day prior, and then restore. And basically they lost probably half a day's worth of productivity. But because they had a good backup strategy, they were able to get back online quickly. And then number 13, no disaster recovery plan. Things happen, especially in an office building. You can't help if there's going to be flooding above you, right, that comes down in over the weekend, or there's a tornado, depending what part of the country you're in, or a hurricane, fire. Things happen. Mm-hmm. And so you can lose your office, you can lose your computers, and you need to have a recovery plan that typically is located somewhere else, geographically distant. So for us, we use Amazon Web Services. And then for our backup plan, we utilize a service called Crash Plan, which is a separate service, different company, different location, and we're restoring every 24 hours with them.
I remember we had there's a current client that was in Florida when one of the hurricanes came through, and he was able to continue working remotely, and credited that to us because he was able to avoid disaster and went in. I think he went to Georgia or one of the surrounding states there and was able to.
So he had to evacuate.
He had to evacuate the
to,
office, but he continued to generate revenue through his business, kept his business running. So.
Yeah, depending what kind of business, right? You can imagine clients need to get access to their attorneys during difficult times because things are happening, so you can't shut down.
You can only do that in the cloud. So.
There you go. So those are the 13 common mistakes that we run into, technology mistakes. Let's shift gears and we'll talk about some of the additional things that firms can do to improve their productivity and avoid these mistakes.
Absolutely.
One of the places I like to begin is how companies spend their money. And in this Thomson Reuters report, one of the things that came out was that companies, they had 4 kinds of companies. Dynamic, they put them into a quartile. Dynamic companies, average companies were kind of in the middle, second and third quartile, and then static firms. And basically the dynamic firms that are growing the fastest were outspending their peers by 2 to 3% in 3 areas. It was marketing and business development, and then technology. And that 2 to 3% doesn't sound like a lot, but it actually is creating this peer gap where this is as a percent of revenue. A dynamic firm, for example, is spending about 2% more on their marketing and business development than the average firms. And the point is that's how they're breaking away to invest in automation tools and put the money in the front end because that's actually cheaper than hiring people.
Absolutely.
So it's an important mindset that, the other piece that's interesting, Mike, is in this report, dynamic firms, it had nothing to do with the size of the firm. So it didn't matter whether you were 10 employees or you were 500 employees. If you were growing rapidly, you were considered dynamic.
Right.
It didn't have anything to do with location, like LA might be growing better than Montana. It didn't have anything to do with the footprint of the firm. Are you just a local firm in your county? Or are you a regional firm, you're in the Northeast, or are you a global firm? It just simply was.
And so these are all law firms, though, right?
All law firms.
Okay.
So the fastest growing ones are outspending.
Yeah. Investment in technology is what's driving not only law firms, but all businesses.
Yeah.
So that makes sense to me.
So let's talk about the cloud. There's a few reasons that law firms will move to the cloud, and there's typically 5 basics. Number one is they want scalability. They want to scale easily. And what does that mean for a law firm? Scale is when people leave the firm and you're reducing headcount, you want to be able to control the data, control files and things like that. And by being in the cloud, all of it is stored on your company's server in the cloud. Number 2 is mobility. And these 2 things kind of go hand in hand, where one of the firms we're working with that's moving to the cloud, they were concerned actually that, hey, if we move to the cloud and you can log in from anywhere, that sounds good, but we're a little concerned about will we get the productivity from our people. And these are a couple of older owners of the firm. And we had this discussion about, hey, the workforce is changing, which they recognize that there's this shift that millennials want to be able to work from home, maybe have a different work-life balance. And as we got to talking, their firm is maybe, let's say it's 25 people today, and they envision over the next few years going to about 40 people. They would have to move law firms to go from 25 to 40. They have to move offices, which is expensive.
Right.
But if they incorporate the cloud and they have mobility from anywhere, the next people that they hire can actually be work from home. They don't have to be in the office. You don't need a new office. And
some of them can be overseas.
Some of them can be overseas. And we talked about it earlier, the point about being able to contact prospects when they come in on Sunday morning. You can have people working from home that that can do that as part of the job description. So scalability, mobility.
And with turnover, I mean, just in my experience seeing, you know, if there's anybody, if just obviously firms hire and fire, just like any other business, and turnover is a really easy process with this, just in my experience, in terms of turning off a workspace and setting up a new workspace for a new employee.
Yep. Reliability is huge. We all know the issues. I need to be in court in an hour and I can't print, or the network went down, or one of my favorites is Monday morning, the email comes out and the IT guy says, hey, I need to take the network down in order to do a software installation and we'll be back on in an hour. But it's Monday morning and everybody's just come in and wanting to get things done. So 24/7 reliability is a big deal. For example, in our cloud business, one of the reasons we use Amazon Web Services is because they do have, 99.99+% reliability. It's just always there. And then we also monitor. We do 24/7 monitoring. So if there's an issue, my printer won't work, you can quickly put in a ticket or a phone call and get it fixed within the hour. Bank grade security. We talked about the pitfalls of not having bank grade security earlier, but just to reiterate, that's why we use Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure, specifically because they just employ thousands of people to be able to work on the security issues. And it's also it's a shared responsibility where clients need to do their own part, training and that sort of thing, to make sure that, again, employees aren't clicking on attachments on emails that they don't know anything about. And then lastly, why move to the cloud? Typically, it's about 20 to 30% cost effective or cheaper. Renting computers is cheaper than buying new computers every couple of years and paying an IT person to maintain them and all of that. Whenever we do a quotation, it always comes in that ballpark, kind of 20 to 30, 35%. Okay.
And on that trend, no. Okay. I thought it was my slide. So.
We'll get there in just a sec. So one of the things also that sometimes we run into clients, they're interested in the cloud, they've heard about it, they know that businesses are moving to the cloud. If you watch the World Series, all of the StatCast was powered by Amazon Web Services.
Right.
So typically just how it works is firms will have computers and data stored, in their office, might be in a closet or, in the break room, under a desk. And we use, so cloud computing is transferring your compute to somewhere else. And we use the data centers provided by Amazon Web Services. There's plenty of other services out there. But essentially, we do a lift and shift, or we transfer your data, your client information, your case documents, the files that you're working on, your applications, Needles or Time Matters or Abacus or Best Case. And we move all of that and run it in the Amazon servers. And then we assign a workspace or a desktop to each person, each employee. So if you've got 15 people, there's 15 workspaces. Everybody has their own desktop that they are using. But the compute is no longer taking place in your own office. It's actually happening. If you're on the West Coast with AWS, it's up in Oregon, and if you're on the East Coast, it's in Northern Virginia. So just some of the concerns around cloud. We've talked about security, and some folks, hey, is it more secure to have it in my office or AWS? I know there's hacks. There's no 100% guaranteed doing one way or the other. Our view on security is I don't keep my money at home. I use a bank, and they've got better security than I do. And Amazon Web Services, as we discussed, the DoD and CIA use them. Enterprises are moving, completely over to Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud because of the security issues. But it's a shared responsibility. They also guarantee HIPAA compliance to make sure that the data storage, meets government requirements. Change in the office. Boy, people don't like to change. They've been doing one thing for a long time, on their computers, and suddenly it's got a bit of a new look and feel. So we make sure that we've got training, on day one after shifting companies. Can I run my apps in the cloud? Yes, we transfer your apps over, and whatever you had in your office, we're running in the cloud. Speed, we actually find it's typically faster because the servers are much more powerful in the cloud, and there's no drop off, but oftentimes it's just a faster, waiting for a page to load happens much more quickly running in the cloud. And then lastly, will I really save money? So as I mentioned on the front end, we save 20 to 30%, and very often we'll find that over time, there's actually additional savings that accrue that it can go up, as you begin to use it. So at any rate, those are some of the typical concerns that we see. So if we shift gears and talk about software, Mike, I'll kick it back over to you. There's a lot of things you can do outside of the legal space in terms of software tools.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, some attorneys, some firms are, ready to jump in head first and go, full bore. And some people are, looking to piecemeal some of these things. So there's definitely a lot of different options for wherever you are in your, practice currently. But typically, software applications outside of the legal sphere tend to be cheaper, more affordable, and they tend to be more developed as well, because this is enterprise software built for businesses, not specifically attorneys, but they're built for businesses, and they inherently have automation capabilities.
They're adaptable.
They're completely customizable, adaptable. The only difference is the brand name, I guess. We have a system that we use that says says deals. We can simply change that to cases.
Sure.
And then it makes sense for some reason. Just change
like a CRM tool.
Right, a CRM tool. And so, and typically, software applications that solely focus on the legal sphere, usually they don't have the kind of budget that the bigger companies that are able to cater to everybody under the sun. So their business model is a little bit different. So you typically get a bigger bang for your buck. The other side of it is usability. You need to have someone, you typically have to have someone with some technology know-how in order to get all that up and running for you.
Okay.
But it's definitely something to consider. And this is just a kind of a list. In-house, we use Google Drive, Google Docs, Google Sheets, everything in Google. And the reason why we do that is the collaborative nature of it. If I have a Google Sheet, I can update it in real time, and someone else who has access to it can actually see me making those updates in real time. They can make updates, and all of that is tracked. Every single edit that's made to a Google Sheet, Google Doc, whatever it is that you're using, is updated in real time, and we actually have a full history. So if we make a mistake on something, we can even roll it back to an older version of that document. Whereas the old school way of using Microsoft Word, Excel, which I still use if I'm using something for myself, because those programs tend to be more robust than the cloud solutions. But on the day-to-day stuff, collaborative stuff, it just doesn't make sense for me to be updating a spreadsheet, email it to my colleague. They download it,
track changes, and
right.
Am I in track changes? Am I not in track changes? I get that.
And then they got to email back to me, and then who knows? It gets very confusing. So that alone has helped us with our productivity and collaboration. We do content for attorneys. We send them Google Docs so they can make their edits right there in real time, and then we have it. We don't need to wait for them to even email to us, which is really awesome. CRM solutions, we're partial to Agile CRM, but any of these pretty much do the same functions. And we can even customize it to be utilized for case management beyond just the new lead campaigns or appointment set campaigns with SMS reminders. Even beyond that, you can we actually have a bankruptcy attorney in Charlotte that we've built out full automation process through the Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 filing with reminders throughout of when the petition hearing is, when the meeting of creditors is, and what documents they still need to file, whatever it is. So It's fully customizable. There's still features that I'm trying to wrap my head around in terms of like automated call dialing. You can have like someone, it's just a robot, but it'll automatically dial your client, remind them of the appointment that you have set, or if they need to come to the meeting of creditors, whatever it is, all of that's automated and agile. And I believe a lot of these other systems utilize the same thing.
The other thing is they're cost effective. I mean, some of them are, $5 a month per user, $10 a month, pretty cheap. And many of the CRM tools also have a free version, like HubSpot. You can get a long way down the road with the free version, depending how much data you put into it before you have to transition over.
Definitely.
So we're moving towards our Q&A. So if you've got specific questions, we'll be moving there in just a minute. Again, use your chat box. But we talked about, think of your law firm as a business and efficiency, increasing productivity, doing more with the employees that you have by using automation and tools. Fear to change is the enemy of success, and one of that often holds firms back. It's hard to get people to move. They don't like to change. But if productivity is declining, that is a good kick in the rear end to
absolutely, you gotta
figure out where it's happening. Yep.
Obviously, technology is driving that, the change that we're seeing in the technological age that we're in. So the more we can automate processes and get out of doing paper, law firm by paper, when I hear that, I'm just like, wow, got a long way to go.
Nobody wants that.
And they're still out there. They're still
for
doing
sure.
it. So, and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying, if you want to keep up with the LegalZoom or the big companies that are coming out there with all kinds of, if you want to compete and automate your processes, you got to use technology. It's just the way it is.
Good. So, Mike, let's move to the Q&A portion. So for those of you online with us, if you open up your chat box, we're going to type in your questions.
No.
So I'll take a minute here while you're typing in your questions. One of the things that comes up that I run into, one of the common things that I get asked a lot, if I use my own question here for a moment, is, okay, I'm interested in the cloud. Yes, I understand it's going to save money, but what does it take to actually, where do I begin? What's the process? And we typically go through 6 key steps in migrating a firm to the cloud. And 4 of those steps are all before you do anything, before you take action and actually cut over. That it's sort of like proper prior planning prevents poor performance. So we do a discovery session to understand what a client has, what kind of computers they have, how many users, what kind of software apps they're running. Then we move into a planning phase once we have all that data, and we begin to plan out what's going to be moving. Again, in our case, we use Amazon Web Services, but we come up with a plan. Our third step is we build and test. So we begin to create the workspaces in Amazon Web Services, and we begin moving some data there just to test out and make sure that we can see it. And then we get ready for the transfer, which is to go live. And we typically do that over a weekend, where we'll do that transition like on a Saturday night, Sunday morning, and then when everybody comes in Monday morning for work, they're ready to go and everything's been moved over. Step 5, we do training. So on day 1, we'll train the firm to make sure they understand the new look and feel, and typically within minutes, most people get it. It looks very similar to what they've been using. And then we move into support mode, which is the last step, and ongoing, which is kind of 24/7 monitoring and support. But those 6 steps are important in the cloud migration process. And typically it takes, a couple of weeks to go do that, a month in order to go transfer somebody properly.
Right. Cool. I guess I'll take one. One of the questions that I get a lot is, how do you track phone calls? So, and how do you track leads by source?
Okay.
Because people want to, you're talking about the metrics and determining, the cost effectiveness of different mediums of your marketing. So we have to have tracking, complete tracking. We actually use a third-party system that we put a JavaScript code in there, and it actually swaps the phone number. So each person that visits the website gets a different number in the number group, and then that's attached to their IP address, and that data is connected to analytics. And so then it's able to say, okay, this phone call came through this ad, and we can track everything that they did on the website before making that phone call. And then we can, from there, you can score lead, key lead scoring is very important. And then if you're utilizing a CRM, all of that data can be automated to where you get, monthly reports of, leads by source, not only leads by source, but revenue generated by source. And being able to track, submitting contact forms to the website or chat, that's pretty straightforward in terms of tracking, but tracking phone calls as well is very important, and knowing where they're coming from.
Good. So any questions on the chat box? This is a good opportunity to type them in. I'm not seeing any come up, so I am going to transition. A couple of takeaways, right? We talked about 13 reasons or mistakes that small law firms typically make around technology, and if you walk away with one or two things that you can change for your firm, number one is invest, right? Mm-hmm. Invest in marketing, business development, and technology. The dynamic firms are the ones that are growing fastest, are outspending their peers. Number two, automate. Automate. That is the best way to increase productivity, with the number of employees that you have, and a lot of tools to be able to do that. Your last point about calculating, return on investment around marketing, all that data is important to know what's working and what's not, so you can have a plan of action and basically weed out the things that aren't working and, water the flowers that are growing, right? So, cybersecurity training. People are the weakest link, so make sure that you've got cybersecurity training going on. It's something that we provide for our cloud clients. And then lastly, consider migrating to the cloud for all the security reasons, scalability reasons, save money reasons, those sorts of things. Move your firm to the cloud, create that technology foundation for the rest of your firm to build upon. But those are kind of the 5 key takeaways: invest, automate, ROI, train, and cloud. Good. All right, so in closing, thank you everyone for joining us. We'll wrap here. As always, you may have more information that you want to get a hold of. You may have some specific questions. So for marketing, please contact Mike. For cloud, please contact Greg. You've got our contact information right here. You can also go to our website, James Attorney Marketing or James Attorney Cloud, and connect with us that way. And so one of the things we do is if you've got questions, we're happy to walk through and answer those, give you more information. And we also do a no-charge consultation. So we'll take a look at your technology, we'll take a look at your compute, how you do things, and make recommendations moving forward. So that way, glad to help out in your own journey as you avoid those technology mistakes and build your firm. So Mike, thank you for joining.
Yeah, absolutely, appreciate it.
Good, we'll close here. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.